be able to receive, because it's a muscle. Because if we want to receive more money, we want to receive better customers, that means loving ourselves enough to feel that we're worthy of receiving. It all comes down to clearing any cobwebs of subconscious beliefs. Easier said than done.
Welcome to Women We Should Know with international speaker, mindset reset mentor, author, and your host, Leslie Michaels. With audacious honesty and candor, the Women We Should Know podcast presents the wisdom and life-empowering insights of women who are the embodiments of innovation and social evolution. Please join Leslie as she shares potent conversations that will inspire your personal and professional evolutions.
Welcome back to Women We Should Know. It is, as you all know, the highlight of my day when I get to sit down and have a conversation with a fearless, audacious woman who is out in the world, refusing to color inside the lines, not climbing inside of anybody's boxes that they want to create for her, but in fact, living her best creative self and bringing that creativity to the world so that we can all benefit from it. And it is particularly exciting to me to bring these female voices to all of the other women out there listening as points of inspiration that every one of us can. Today, I have a wonderful woman that you are going to be excited to meet, Melinda Wittstock. She is a 5-time serial in media tech entrepreneur and the CEO and founder of Pato Polo, the interactive podcast network that brings content to life by automatically connecting people to their perfect podcasts and people. We all need that, right?
I hope so.
We all need that. She is an acknowledged visionary in tech, media, mobile platforms, and social content. Melinda, of course, also hosts her own podcast, the quickly growing Wings of Inspired Business, named by Entrepreneur Magazine as number 8 of 20 of the top business podcasts for 2020. The Wings mission is to #lift as we climb, helping female founders leverage their feminine power and collaborate to change the game of business and succeed. Here's a novel idea: without trade-off, guilt, or apology. Now, we're all in for that, aren't we, women? Formerly award-winning journalist, executive producer, and TV anchor for the BBC, ABC News, CNBC, Financial Times Television, and MSNBC, Melinda created and grew a BBC show to 20 million audience, and also innovated one of the first crowdsourcing mobile apps, growing unique users to 3 million in 8 months. Steve Jobs, we've heard of him, right? He once told her that she asks the best questions. Well, that's significant praise. That was a brilliant man. So we're excited to be able to speak with her today, ask her a few questions, and maybe she'll ask us some in return that we can take and use to look at our lives and how we're progressing. Melinda, it is a delight and an honor to have you here today.
Oh gosh, thank you so much. It's wonderful to be with you as well. And I love what you're doing. It's so important as women that we do, like we like to say, lift as we climb. And so the more that we can affirm and acclaim each other's journeys, the better it is for all of us and for that matter, the world. So
Absolutely.
Thank you for all you do.
Oh, it is just the most fun to do what I do because I never work. I
Well,
never work.
isn't that the aim? That I think that's probably why I became an entrepreneur, right? Because you are doing something that doesn't feel like work.
Mhm.
Sometimes it does, to be truthful,
Sure.
there are things that are hard along the journey. But gosh, to be in alignment with your kind of soul's purpose is amazing. And I think women, we're just really coming into our own in entrepreneurship, and really changing the game of how companies need to be built. Like, what does it look like to build a company in a way that fits around who you are, fits around the lifestyle, fits around your feminine power, and not just fitting ourselves into these, I'd say, antiquated modes. Because when I see women in entrepreneurship creating business models that really empower their teams, create great cultures, and do really good things for the world, I really think that's the future.
Absolutely. And the numbers are holding true for this.
Mhm.
When we look at the gains reports, women owned, women run businesses are showing consistently showing more gains than the traditional male dominated companies. And it's blowing everyone out of the water.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Like there's all kinds of I guess in any change period, change is often uneven. So on one hand, you still have this depressing statistic that women led or founded technology businesses still 20 years on only get 2% of the available venture capital money.
Right.
But on the other hand, you know, women owned businesses tend to survive. Like
Yes, that's right.
of the 90% of startups that fail, women founders aren't among those. Much better use of capital, higher valuation growth, like by any study, whether you look at publicly quoted companies on the NASDAQ or the Dow that are run by women do better than the ones run by men,
Yes.
or in the case of startups, those who at least have a founding female member on the team
Yes.
outperform their male counterparts 100% of the time. So there's still a little bit of a disconnect, but I think it's changing.
Well, and it doesn't hurt to have someone like Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank fame speaking at the International Women's Conference saying that based on his experience, he now only invests in women owned, women run
Ah,
companies because of all the companies he owns. 90% of the women owned, women run businesses hit their KPI every time, show gains every quarter, compared to only 65% of the companies he owns that are owned and run by men.
ah. That's
So
so interesting. So I guess I could ask a question. Why do you think that is, with all the women that you interview, that women are doing better at hitting their targets?
I believe women have been trained since birth to hit their targets.
Oh my goodness, that's so true.
Really, we've been trained since birth to hit our targets. We have to take care of everyone. We still have to go to school. We have to take care of everyone. We still have to go to work. We have to handle taking care of the elders. Where are the elders going to live? Where are the kids going to go to the dentist? And we still go to work and occasionally have a happy hour with our girlfriends. So women, what men do not understand and what these big companies do not understand is women are the secret sauce that they're missing out on.
Right. Yeah, I think it's true. And I mean, in a society too that's become a lot more dependent on kind of multitasking, or in fact, I would call it systems thinking. It's
Yes,
that part of our brain that can connect the dots and apply technology in new innovative ways, or see things at it just from a different vantage point or perspective. And insofar as men's and women's brains have evolved a little bit differently over time, I see so many women creating business models that are different from men's. Men's
yes,
are a lot more linear, like A to B, sell the company, flip it next, right?
right.
Women tend to come into entrepreneurship a little bit later in life, They've already tried to intrapreneur within a larger organization or a company. They have already mastered hiring and firing or executive skills, and they have deep domain expertise in their field, so they can see things in terms of how to go and change or disrupt a whole industry, um, in a way that the 20-year-old guy sitting in his garage, eating ramen noodles, wearing a hoodie, and creating a piece of tech, even though that's hugely valuable, that person has none of that business experience, none of it. So like women come into it at a different stage in life with different skills, and hence I think with different business models that tend
Right.
to put a lot of pieces of a puzzle together in a whole new way, rather than it just being a linear straight line, one innovation, one feature company.
Absolutely. I could not agree more. We are singing the same song.
Well, that's
We could
good.
create a choir. I would love to hear, and I'm sure our listeners would love to hear about your particular entrepreneurial story. You're speaking about women entrepreneurs.
Oh gosh. Well, like all entrepreneurial journeys, it's with all kinds of ups and downs. And I've come over time to value and really appreciate those kind of downs, those
Mhm.
either micro failures, or I don't even really see them as failures. I see them as feedback. It's like a scientist in a lab. You keep trying things a number of different ways until eureka, you have it right. And entrepreneurship is not very different from that. And I think one of the things that women really do have to overcome in this space is the willingness to fail or be wrong or get a
Yes.
no or get rejection, because that is part of the process. So obviously, as I've moved along in my entrepreneurial career, which actually kind of started, by the way, at like age 6, where I went door to door demanding prepayment for my show. Okay. And my show was like, I was a ballet dancer and a figure skater, and it had music and it had this and that or whatever. But like, I don't know what possessed me to ask for prepayment. And I sort of like kind of knew to do that. Maybe my parents were arguing about money in the background. I have no idea. Right. But anyway, I went out and did this, and I've always been about, um, creating value for other people.
Mhm.
Like, what can I do to improve lives? So I've always been the type of entrepreneur that's very mission driven, very
Mhm.
service oriented, like spot a problem. And I don't know what it is in my DNA where I see a problem, I say, oh, and I look around and I see no one fixing it. So I'm like, oh, I guess I better do that. So it just so happens that my particular life path is really around the intersection of media and technology and the evolution of media. I really care deeply about things like, people being able to use information in a way that's positive, that actually
Mhm.
empowers them. I really believe that the best content is actually conversation and is
Mhm.
storytelling. And so every single startup of mine, every single business that I've grown has had that uh, at its intersection. Um, and, before I became a full blown entrepreneur, even though I was entrepreneurial in college and I've always had side hustles and all of that, I became a journalist, and it was incredible to be a media correspondent and a business correspondent of the Times of London,
Mhm.
because I was entrepreneurial. I was a kind of journalist that wanted to see where the story was going next. Like, what
Mhm.
did it actually mean? What did it actually impact? What were the opportunities? Where was it going next? And I think, I interviewed Steve Jobs at the time that he was actually running next. Ironic. So I just kind of connected those dots. Um, and I always learned as a journalist from all these amazing sort of industry titans that I interviewed, that, I learned a lot from them, whether it was Richard Branson or whether it was Ted Turner or any of these people, that I had access to, because I could take my microphone and put it in their face, and I had the excuse to
Right.
do so. But I chose to learn from it, not just report. And I think that was a really great grounding in entrepreneurship. The other thing that was a great grounding in entrepreneurship was, you're only as good as the last story you just wrote. in a
Absolutely.
really highly competitive market in London. I was competing against 11 other national dailies, and heaven help you if you didn't have a story that one of your competitors had, and your news editor would call you at midnight and you'd have to
Mhm.
call your sources at home. Heaven
Right.
help you if you didn't have their home number, like that, right? So there was an
Right.
element of entrepreneurialness to it, and also like just a drive in terms of and a quickness and a nimbleness and just kind of getting it done. So fast forward many, many years and creating my first company, it was all really about this kind of, the first one was called Capital News Connection. And then the next one, was News It. And News It was all about leveraging crowdsourcing in such a way that regular people could contribute to journalism and actually elevate journalism with a really profound technological component that would algorithmically be able to ascertain, the relevance and reliability of the content. And that was way bleeding edge at the time. I realize now we were actually solving the fake news problem before there was one. So there's a lesson there about being a little too far advanced of where
I
your
was going to
market.
say, and where is that now? Because,
Oh,
oh, do we need it? Do we need
we
it?
need it. We need it now. I mean, it just so happens
Yes.
that Podopolo is my thing now, but it does take in some components, certainly, of everything that I learned, building News It ultimately, because it just couldn't find its market. It couldn't find its funding. It was
Mm,
actually really painful because I knew I was on the right path. Just the
right.
timing was wrong. It was too early. There was too much of a market to educate. I mean, we did get it to 500,000 users, which was
Mhm,
amazing, and on fumes, because we never really got funded
mhm.
properly. We never had the capital that we needed, but it was an amazing accomplishment because at the time we were also innovating mobile. It was a time when Facebook couldn't figure out mobile yet. And like
Mhm,
we were figuring out our mobile UI. Like it
mhm.
was a time when, algorithms, a lot of the, machine learning was in its infancy. The
Right.
cloud was new. I mean, all these things were new. So it was I talk about like aiming big, but it was
Right.
hard. It was kind of like harder than I bargained for, but I could still see it, so I had this
Sure.
fervor and drive, I was going to do it. Ultimately,
Sure.
what I had to do was pivot that company into what became Verifeed, which also ultimately sold as a company and exited out, but it was using the underlying technology of
Mm,
News It to understand people from their social media conversations, to help people find their ideal customers,
mhm.
based on what people were sharing, so it was the beginning of the micro influencer trend. It was
Right.
kind of the data in behind that. So along the journey, I mean, each one of these lessons, like successes, micro failures, companies that just didn't work, or other companies that took off, sometimes for no, nothing that you can even control yourself. and,
Mhm,
um, and
mhm.
just odd things, luck happening, bad luck happening. I don't know, however you want to look at it.
Right.
Um, I feel like each one of these companies has actually been my lab for Podopolo, which is taking really the fastest growing media of all time, what we're doing right now, podcasting, right? Combining it with an elevated, much more purpose driven social networking capability that actually elevates the conversation and empowers people, because
Mhm.
podcasting is such a great jump off point into that.
Right.
But it's also a creator's economy where podcasters, for the first time, can really get paid for their content. So it combines a number of things, and it's interesting that we began a conversation talking about how women take all these different threads and
That's
and
right.
and and can weave them together in a way that's really unique, and that's exactly what Podopolo is. So it's an app. It's free in either app store, and it has 5 million podcasts in all genres, all languages, and an automatic a recommendation engine that really understands from what you say about yourself and your interests when you first sign up, through to how you're using the app and your friendships on the app, and will recommend the perfect podcast for you, like effortlessly. So you can think of the AI in behind here as being like your best friend who already knows what you love
Mhm.
and puts it in front of you. So it is really vastly superior discovery of really interesting podcasts around what you like. And the flip side of that for a podcaster is podcasters really struggle to be discovered. Like,
Right.
because you're up
Exactly.
against the way the other folks do their algorithms, which is the same 100 podcasts, or you have to know what you're looking for already. So we solve that in a way that helps the listener and the viewer, and also helps the podcaster to really grow their reach. And then because it's social, grow their engagement in a way that's time saving and easy and avoids all the overwhelm of having to post everywhere on social media all the time. And by extension, helps them really grow their revenue, whether it's by advertising, sponsorship, or subscription revenue. And so we're really excited about where we're going. We're kind of the new kid on the block, and but we have so many new features coming soon too, like the ability, it's now about to launch the ability to clip a short snippet of a podcast and share that easily. Counts as a download for a podcast. It makes it much easier to, like, when you're listening to a podcast, you say, oh my God, she just said something that I wish I got to share that with people. And it's really hard. Like, what was the time code? How can I clip that? So we make that effortless. And also things like video live streaming is coming soon, really in the next couple of weeks, and a whole bunch of things before, and more, including socially interactive audio and much more.
Let me go back to that snippet.
The clips. Yeah. I'm excited. I'm so excited about this. I the dev team's working really hard on it. It takes longer.
I know.
To build
My mind's
than-
going
than-
a million miles an hour. Okay, I have to speak with her after this podcast. There are a million questions that we can't fit into this time frame. But the one that I just felt our listeners saying, what? Tell me more about that. How does the snippet thing work? You're jogging, you hear something. How does that work?
Yeah, so you're on the app, right? You got your app with you and you're listening to it and you hear something. There are these little scissors on the screen with the app. You press the little scissor button and it will allow you to select the snippet that you want. We've worked really, really hard on making that very, very easy to do. So kind of like isolated either by time code or by using a little slider, right? That isolates the time code. You press done. It's done. It manifests on the app as if it were like a reel on Instagram. I mean, that's probably the closest comparison. So it's available for other people to see. The user is credited for creating the clip. The podcaster is referenced with a call to action to follow that podcaster. It starts to pick up in the recommendation engine. So it will be put, and then you can share it within the app. So say, for instance, the app has really powerful direct messaging functionality, and we're advancing our social all the time. So it will start to become much more like a threaded conversation, like a Reddit or whatever, incorporating podcasts. But you can instantly share it with your friends, on the app. And then the social sharing beyond the app will happen next on that feature. So you can share beyond Podopolo, and that will be that will come next. I'm always afraid of saying exactly when these features are going to be done, because we have a team of 24 technologists working like around the clock, and it always takes longer than you think it's going to take to get these things done. But the clips are pretty much ready to go. So super excited about it.
Yeah, well, I'm very excited about it. But you just touched on one of the things that makes women great entrepreneurs.
What's that?
We always want it to be a little quicker than it is.
Oh, gosh. I know. This is my
we
cross
don't,
and bear.
and it's not that we lack patience, but our enthusiasm is engaged in what we do. And the passion you have for this project and your enthusiasm is contagious. I am very excited about checking out your new platform.
Oh, fantastic. I'm glad. We'd love to have you there. I mean, it's video enabled, so you can watch the video, and I'm excited about the live stream capabilities too, because we're going to be doing a lot of things. I can't entirely speak about them yet, but in partnership with a lot of live events, where podcasters will be able to host, their shows in front of a live audience and have that live streamed. And so that's coming very soon too. So we're really excited about that.
Oh, I'm very excited about that. I will definitely want to know about that. So in terms of podcasting, it's this big phenomena. I don't know if this is actually where it started, but this is where I heard of it. The Gen Zs.
Yeah.
were doing this on YouTube. I might have been late to the party. Maybe they weren't the first ones, but that's where I heard of it, is these creative, brilliant young Gen Z minds had dreamed up this thing on what we call YouTube. And then it spread, and I heard about it for a while. And then finally, I had something I couldn't not do. And so here I am now. But how does one, let's take me, for example. I've just been doing my podcast for about a year. I'm just learning it. How does someone like me, or someone who's been doing maybe 6 months, how do we leverage our voice to rise above the roar?
Oh gosh, this is such a big question for podcasting because
Mhm.
on one hand, there's such a low barrier to entry. Like all you
Right,
need is like, I got this little USB mic here plugged into my laptop. I mean, that's all you need.
right.
It's so simple to actually create a podcast. You have a good message, you have expertise you want to share with the world. So there's this blossoming of podcasts. I find in all the podcasters and would-be podcasters that I mentor or help them create their podcasts, the one thing, or actually there are two that most don't think about is, what's my marketing plan,
Mhm.
right? Who's my ideal audience?
Right,
How am I going to get in front of those people? Where
right.
are those people even? Where do they
Mhm.
hang out? What kind of problem am I solving for them? Like really thinking about it like a really top marketer would think about it, because at the end of the day, your podcast is a product like any other
Mhm. It
product,
is.
and it needs a marketing strategy. So I find that most folks don't think about that. And if they're not thinking about that, they're certainly not thinking about their monetization strategy.
Right.
And so here's the thing though, and coming into podcasting, I launched Wings 2017. I'm almost 700 episodes in now. It's crazy. It's like
Wow.
a lot of women that I've interviewed, and
Yes.
which is amazing because it's like my personal mastermind. I always learn something from every interview that I do, which is great. And
Mhm.
I send people a lot of business. And
Mhm.
so it's very much in alignment with that mission. But one of the things that I learned is, even with all my business expertise, even
Mhm.
with all my marketing knowledge, even with all the things I'd done, it was still hard to grow the podcast.
Right.
Like it was still hard. So I tried all kinds of different things, and some of them worked, some of them didn't. One of the things that I did right in the very early days is I launched, and this was probably an over deliver, but I actually launched my podcast with 20 episodes. And I made sure that the guests on those 20 episodes all had big audiences, big email lists, big, social followings. And I made them swear on their lives, and I had to chase it, that they would all promote Wings on the same day and
Oh.
continue to promote it, right?
Mhm.
And that was a launch strategy that was really important. And it's even if you've already launched and you're podcasting right now, there's no reason why you can't do something like that, like have a
Right.
promotion where you really engage your guests as
Mhm.
your best customers. Because I think the thing that podcasters forget is their guests are getting so much benefit out of it.
That's right.
And how to make that relationship truly reciprocal, so both people are gaining from it. So
Mhm.
that's one thing. I think the other thing that I did very early on, when I launched my podcast, really Apple was the only game in town. So what mattered then, it matters less now, but what mattered then was, God, how to get into new and noteworthy. And
Mm.
so I was like doing all the things to like get my reviews and try and figure out the algorithm and all that stuff. And then I learned from someone inside Apple that they hadn't changed any of the new and noteworthy titles for like 6 months. It's like nobody, it just wasn't a priority to Apple, like they sell computers and iPhones, you know what I mean?
Right.
So so they so I was
Whoops.
like slaving away, and I was like, because I thought it was a real thing, and it gave me the algorithm, and it was just like kind of like a waste of time. And
Right.
these are some of the things that I came up against, which frankly was one of the reasons I launched. Well, actually, the reason I launched Podopolo. It's like my own lived experience. Like you can figure out all these hacks to answer your question, like how do you get heard and seen? How do you leverage influencers? How do you get your guests to be your best salespeople? How do you, right? et cetera, et cetera. How do you make money from it? All those things. And there's all kinds of tactics. Like I could talk to you endlessly about SEO, or if you want to get really advanced, voice SEO. So when someone searches for something via voice, there's a little Google snippet that is answering that person's question. That would presuppose that you create your podcast in such a way that you have all these snippets ready and you've sliced and diced them and they're all indexed beautifully on your website, and it's worth doing, but it's like, it's a real project. Okay.
Yes.
So there are ways to hack it, but in my experience, the vast majority of podcasters aren't in it because they're superstar marketers. They're not in it because they're entrepreneurs or business people or even want to do any of those things. They're in it because they have a mission.
Mhm.
And so I just want to make it easy for them, right? Like, can we take all that pain away and just kind of like do it for people? Like, how can
Mhm.
we assist them in that? So that's very much the guiding principle behind Podopolo from the creator side.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. I guess I'm writing the line. I'm on the entrepreneur, but I have a mission.
Yeah, well, that's a wonderful
And
place. That's a wonderful place to be because, I think certainly if you want to be an entrepreneur, it's a hell of a lot easier if you have that mission, that North Star,
yes,
and for that matter, podcaster too. Like, it's absolutely vital, and vice versa. Like, it advances your mission if you have entrepreneurial skills. So you're
right,
in
right,
exactly the right spot.
right. What is the number one biggest mistake that you see podcasters making on a daily basis that just drives you crazy, makes your hair curl?
Makes my hair curl. Let's see. Um, okay, a couple of things. One is, well, actually, there's not that, I'm trying to think of the biggest mistake. Okay, these are the things that make my hair curl. Okay, like and
Okay, you can do a grocery list if you need
not
to.
necessarily in order of importance, but
Yes.
interviewing. You're a wonderful interviewer, right? Because we're having a conversation right now,
Mhm.
right? And you're making me feel really comfortable, and you're listening to my answers and you're forming your questions based on the conversation we're having. Okay. So pet peeve, maybe it is number one for me, is when you hear someone trying to interview someone and they say something and they just are reading their questions off a pre-prepared list and not really engaging.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's very hard to listen to,
It's boring.
because you really do have to be get yourself as a host
Mhm.
into the mindset of your listener.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it's an empathy thing. Like, it's like, okay, what's my listener hearing? What am I giving my listener? What is the point of this? Right.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
I think podcasters often, by extension, to miss the opportunity to tell a great story or weave a great story or storyline through. And it's worth, even if you're not like a true crime podcast, you're not in that genre, it's worth listening to those to get
Mhm.
tips in terms of how to create a sort of narrative structure
Mhm.
within your format.
Mhm.
That allows for those cliffhangers in an episode or things like that that just keep people listening.
Mhm. Mhm.
I think another thing, though, too, and it's not really the podcaster's fault at this stage. It's just, how can we all better understand who our audience actually is and be more
Mhm.
responsive to them?
Right.
And this was frustrating me forever because I never really knew. Like, I had a hypothesis of who was listening, but I didn't really know. Like,
Right.
presumably there are female entrepreneurs that are listening, but like,
Mhm.
I mean,
Mhm.
I didn't know what proportion of them were men, female, what age, like what they were interested in most, I had sort of an inkling in terms of which episodes did better than others, but it seemed like there was no pattern to it. And this is one of the reasons why, sorry, again, Podopolo, we are actually providing podcasters with really deep audience insights that are actionable. So you start to see patterns in the data, which is really interesting. Like, oh my
Mhm.
God, 80% of people stop listening after 14 minutes. And it's like, okay, well, why is that? Like, should my podcast only be 14 minutes long? Because that's
Right.
how long my listeners have, or what am I doing at 14 minutes? So
Right.
what I'd like to see is all of us being able to leverage those insights and that the data, honestly, to be more responsive to listeners and actually kind of understand, what it is they want, and by extension involve them in the conversation. So I
Mhm.
love it when podcasters feature their listeners on the air in some sort of contest or something, or allow their listeners to ask questions, or give them a shout out for giving them a review or whatever, and
Mhm.
making that process more kind of more like a feedback loop. And
Right.
that's just me. I love that. The biggest mistake that podcasters make when they're starting a podcast is obsessing about their technology. That is honestly the easiest thing. Like, what microphone should the question I always get asked, what microphone should I get? Oh my God, this is the simplest thing. It's like, no, no. Who is your audience? What's the transformation you want to see in them? And where will you find them? How will you speak to them? Like, all of those things. How will you make money? Is this a business for you, or is it just a side hustle? Like, what is it in your life? How much time do you have? Like all of those, all of those things are the important things to really think about. The rest, once you have those things, the rest is the easy and fun part.
Good. This is great news because most of those mistakes I've already made, which means they're in my past. Doesn't mean I won't go out and invent new
Well, we
ones,
all make
but
new
at
ones,
least
right?
those are in my past.
Yeah, but I mean, this is the funny thing about life. Like, there'll be some other mistake, but
Right.
that's why we're here in earth suits. I mean, we're all here to learn. Like, we all have different life lessons, we all have different pathways, and we're all here to learn. And I think as women, we have to learn more compassion for ourselves
Absolutely.
and more forgiveness for ourselves. Holy crap. I mean, we really put a lot of pressure. I'm so guilty of it myself. That's why I'm laughing. I hear myself say this to others, and I'm like actually saying it to myself as much as I am to anyone else.
Oh, well, I'm so glad to know I'm not the only one who does that. Oh, if I
Everyone.
would follow half of my advice, I'd be in such great shape. Thank you for those great tips. And like I say, I'm an incredibly creative person, so I'll go and invent some new mistakes.
Oh, I'd
And
love to have
when I
you.
do, I'll share all of those mistakes. I can hear your passion for this project that you're involved in. I'm getting passionate about this. I can't wait to finish my work day today and go home and sit down and Google and find out all about it. As you move forward, what's that big next, because you've had many, but that next big brass ring that you have your
Oh
sights set
gosh,
on?
I'm so focused on Podopolo right now, and there's so many aspects of it. When I think of it on a 5-year trajectory, one of the things that's really close to my heart is it's also a social impact company. So as we start to leverage in some of the gamification components, for those of you who don't know what gamification is, it's really applying game theory, or the principles that make a game really addictive to a non-gaming situation. So it's like
Hmm.
you see it in progress boards, progress bars rather,
Mhm.
say on your LinkedIn profile, like how much is your profile complete, or you see it in like leveling up or
Right.
surprise awards or whatever. A lot of companies are using aspects of gamification in different ways, and Podopolo is not unlike them.
Mhm.
Where I want to be, certainly by the end of this year, is in a position where we can say, just by listening on Podopolo, you're making a social impact.
Mm.
And the way that we're doing this is myriad, but like, for instance, someone could be just listening and all of a sudden it's like, hey, congratulations, Lynn, we've just planted 100 trees for you, right? it'll
Mm.
it'll manifest like that. It'll also manifest in terms of allowing podcasters to really, we already do have this, anyone who's a podcaster who's kind of claimed their podcast or authenticated the ownership of their podcast on Podopolo can associate their podcast with a particular charity.
Mhm.
We're going to use the social to really allow the what's being learned in a podcast to actually take shape in people's lives. So this is a very big vision. I feel like we're really just at the very early stages. Like, we've accomplished so much, but we're just so at the early stages of it. So
Mhm.
that social impact mission is the thing that really guides me. And I know that further down the track, years ago, I put an intention into the world that I was going to fund, personally invest $10 million in between 10 and 100 female founded companies,
Mhm.
sometime in the next 10 years.
Mhm.
So I don't have the money for that yet. So, but it's an intention. So I just imagine as if it's done, you know what I mean? But I want
Absolutely.
to be able to, of all the value that we're building with Podopolo, I want to be able to use that
Mhm.
uh, to follow on, whether it's within Podopolo, beyond Podopolo, et cetera. And there's so much that I don't know. I just know the intention around it.
That is brilliant, and that is such a worthy brass ring. I'm grateful that you shared that with us. To be able to
You can call me in 10 years and say, how did that go? How much? Do you still have some money?
I have a company, I have a new company that we're getting ready to roll out.
Well, yeah, you
Absolutely, I
see,
will.
it's just, this has been the pain point, and to see that 2% of venture money hasn't moved in 2 decades.
That's right.
And just all the stats we were talking about at the beginning of this interview.
Right.
And like, what does it take? And, there are more women VCs, but, unfortunately, like I found with Podopolo, this is really weird. I can't figure this out. I can't even get a meeting with any of the female VCs. The only ones that take my meetings are guys. I'm like, what is with that? And so I
Well,
don't
that's a whole
know.
nother conversation that
It's a
I'd love
whole
to have
other
with you. And
conversation, but what's that? And so many other female entrepreneurs in tech have the same experience. And it's like, wait a minute, but I thought you were doing this to help other women.
no, 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 no. I just completed a big study on that very topic. We'll
You
chat.
did. Oh my goodness,
Yeah,
we're gonna have to talk. We're gonna have to talk more. But you're
absolutely.
right; it's a whole other topic, and like we touch on that, on a number of different episodes on Wings of Inspired Business, because it comes up, and like every single woman really struggles to get capital, and as a result, we use capital more efficiently because we have to. But just
Yes,
think what we could do if we had more.
exactly, exactly.
Wow.
And the fact that women-owned, as I said in the beginning, operated businesses are being applauded across from Harvard Business Review to Forbes to Business and Finance, et cetera, for showing more gains than the male run businesses, and they're doing it on less venture capital.
Yeah.
Well,
Increasingly. I
maybe
mean,
they're
we're
afraid
having to
we'll take over the world if they give us more money. We're doing so well with
think
so
that's it.
little that they're afraid that
Yeah.
we'll just take over the world. What they don't realize is that it'll be a kinder, gentler world.
Exactly. Ultimately, more compassionate for them too.
Absolutely, for them too. Absolutely.
You know? So,
Absolutely. I could keep on going for a long time. I know we're going to have after podcast chats. As we come up to our close, Melinda, what would you like to share with our listeners that either I didn't ask or is just in your heart to bring forward?
oh my goodness, what a lovely question. I think there are things for women that are so vital, to learn, whatever you're doing, whatever your career path. I mean, one of them is really that self-compassion that I can't emphasize enough, because I think we are really hard on ourselves. It
Mhm,
manifests as perfectionism.
mhm,
And the perfectionism keeps us playing too small,
mhm,
much too small. It's just as easy to start a big business as it is to start a small businesses. All big businesses start small,
mhm,
but the big ones have a bigger vision. So sometimes we limit ourselves
mhm,
because we think erroneously that to have it all, we have to do it all, and we don't. So this is where the perfectionism gets in the way. This idea that we have to be doing everything, and everything has to be perfect, and it has to have to perfect pink bow, and we have to look camera ready doing it, and we have to have to. No, we've got to get better at asking for help. We have to get
mhm.
better at receiving help.
Yes.
And the receiving is important because often we don't want to receive it, even a compliment like, oh, I like your jacket, or what, this whole thing like that.
Right.
Catch yourself in that, like be able to receive, because it's a muscle.
Yes.
Because if we want to receive more money, we want to receive better customers, we want to receive all these things, we have to be able to receive. And that means loving ourselves enough to feel that we're worthy of receiving whatever it is. So in other words, all
Right.
of this comes down to mindset. It all comes down to clearing any cobwebs of subconscious beliefs. Easier said than done, but it's a journey. And I joke on my podcast all the time that if you want therapy, just become an entrepreneur, because it's all going to
It's the
come up.
truth.
It's going to
Yeah.
confront you, and either you deal with it and you succeed, or you don't and you fail. It's as simple
That's
as
right.
that.
Yeah.
And so it forces you to go on this personal growth journey. And I mean, that's basically my story. And it's like there are little cobwebs, whatever. But gosh, the perfectionism thing, we got to get over that. It should be an AA for perfectionists, really.
Really, we should create
Yeah,
one.
yeah. It's
But
all
I
like,
really want to highlight one thing you said as we get ready to close, because I want all of our listeners to be able to take this, stick it in their pocket, take it forward with them, pull it out when they need it. And that is, you can have it all, but you don't have to do it all.
yes.
In fact, you can't have it all if you want to do it all.
Oh no, it actually decreases your likelihood, right?
Uh,
Because you get in the way. Like I remember I used to watch my mom who'd clean the house before the housekeeper came. And I remember thinking as a kid, well, that's kind of silly. I mean, why'd you hire the housekeeper? I mean,
right.
and another version of this is I remember one of my mentors catching me in this. I was like fixing broken links on the website or whatever. And he said, so how much would you pay someone to fix broken links on your website, Melinda? I said, oh, I don't know, maybe like, a lot of people like assistants or whatever, maybe they're like paid $30 or $40 an hour, something like that. He said, okay, so in this hour, what if you spent the hour of your time and you closed a major sponsor, or you brought in funding, or you did this, or sold a new client, or like whatever, right? How much would your hourly rate be? Would it be 100? Would it be 1,000? Would it be $10,000? Like if I brought $1 million into the company, should I be paid $10,000 for that? Should I be paid 100,000, right? What was my hourly rate? And he said, can you see how you're stealing from your own company? And I was really kind of like intense.
That's
man,
profound
but
and
man,
important.
like I got it. And this is where women really need to learn the lessons of leverage. So
Yes.
it's not just about perfectionism, but there's a very real reason why you shouldn't do it all, because different things that you're doing day to day have different value.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
so knowing like what's the one thing that only you can do, that nobody else in the company can do, but only you can do. And then what's the thing that you love to do? You love doing it. It's great. You're really great at it, but there are other people who also love to do it. And they're also great at it. Right. And then in another, it's kind of like a foursquare. And in the other one, it's like, what are the stuff that you're good at? You don't mind doing, but you don't love doing, but someone else could probably do better. And then in the last square, what's the stuff that you hate? Like you'd rather watch paint dry, or like, I don't know, dredge the seaway or something, like anything, like something just that you really like hate doing, and you really, I'm just going to say it, suck at. Okay. And
Right.
so if you look at yourself in that four quadrant, honestly, and it's the type of thing you got to go back to kind of over and over again, because
Right.
it changes over time as you get more self-awareness. But you really should be operating entirely in your zone of genius and delegating the rest. It's ultimately less costly, and your team and investing in a team early enough, that's an investment, not an expense.
Absolutely. And women out there, I'm going to encourage you, when you're not jogging and you have a moment, to go back and watch some video, to get a pen and paper, write down Melinda's 4-point process for analysis of what you should and shouldn't be doing in your company, because she just gave you the keys to success. And
So important.
Grateful, so grateful. And of course, I will do for you what I always do for you. You know how I love doing this. I will put all of the contact information, the social media links, all of the information Melinda wants to share with you to be able to connect with her and her wonderful platform right there in the program notes. So go, you know where to go to the program notes, click, share, subscribe, and be in touch with this amazing woman. Melinda, thank you so much for coming on. This has been delightful, educational, and entertaining all in one.
Oh, well, that's fantastic. Wow, I'm feeling good. Good,
Yes.
good way to start a Monday. Thank you.
Absolutely. I really appreciate it. And I know our listeners received many great tips that they will be carrying forward in their pockets. So thank you for sharing.
Well,
And
thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. It was delightful to speak to
absolutely.
you, and you're really great at what you do.
Oh,
Thank
well,
you.
thank you. Thank you. That's really generous.
That's just true.
So, women, as you go forward today, and your pockets are full of wonderful tips, golden nuggets that you received in this period of time, have a wonderful day. And above all, I'd like to remind you that you truly are stronger and wiser than you know.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. We hope you received inspiration for expanding your own social innovation and influence. Help us inspire others by sharing this episode and leaving your comments over at lesliemichaels.com/podcast. For more tips, insights, and support in creating a fully audacious, professional, and personal lifestyle you love, visit our Women We Should Know community on Facebook.